Great, thank you so much. Well, I appreciate everybody joining today. And I want to thank eLearning Brothers. I remember back, I was at ATD, I think it was 2011, maybe. And you guys had a booth there. And I was like, who are these dudes? I have no idea. I've never heard of them. And it's amazing to see the growth. And I'm very excited to see that this combining of eBrothers with Rehearsal has happened. It's great. And also a quick ad at Paychex. Congratulations on the award. I'm a bit jealous. I have two trainers that are under me that have worked with you or former colleagues. So I sent them out a chat, a DM that said that you had won this award through Rehearsal. And so Ed, Kevin O'Brien and Jen Conway send their regards. So today, what we're going to do over the next 30 minutes is this is, not like a pitch for Rehearsal. I'm going to talk about Rehearsal and what we've done with it. But I thought what would be more valuable for everyone here, because, the suite of eLearning Brothers is much more comprehensive, right, than just Rehearsal, that I do want to talk about more about the folks that are on this call that are in charge of like sales training programs. And you may be like a sales training manager or within Enablement. But what I have found is that some of the most difficult parts of leading a team is selling your training program to sales leadership. And that, often it's kind of like training is superfluous, right? We're not the trusted advisors of our organization. And so I wanted to give people some tips. And this is something that Derek and I have talked about a lot. It's a real passion of mine to show the real value of training. So if you're in that position, I think this will be valuable. If you want a copy of the deck, at the end, I'll give you my LinkedIn profile. You can connect with me and just email me and ask for the deck. Otherwise, feel free to take screenshots and such. So just a quick background on my side. These are the companies that I've worked for in the past, and I've set up training and sales enablement programs for them. And right now I'm at Human Interest, which is a fintech company. We give the opportunity to small business owners to have a 401k plan. So we offer a service to be able to access 401k plans at an inexpensive cost point for small businesses. So like your local bakery. And so I feel really good about that. Often in sales, sometimes you have to sell products you don't really believe in. This one I really do. And so I feel very fortunate. I've only been there for about 2-3 months. Before that, I was at Greenflower, which is the largest e-learning company in the cannabis industry. And then also in the e-learning space with lynda.com and LinkedIn. So that's kind of just where I've set departments up at those companies. And what I would say is the first step that I would advise you for is really expanding on how you see your teams function if you are in that sales training world. And what I mean by that is sales training is often defined by this kind of stuff. Like you do our onboarding, you conduct product training, selling training, retaining, maybe processes and procedures. But if you're in that spot, I actually recommend to expand it, because when times are hard, training is what gets whacked, right? We're the ones, along with recruiting and with marketing and accounting, we're the ones that are seen as cost prohibitive. And when you increase your value to the organization, you can you can kind of deal with those storms that come through. And so what I mean by that is when I come into an organization, and I went into one that was set just like that at a company called Edmunds, which is an automotive research site that's now owned by CarMax. And I walked in and I said, we needed to be doing more with our department than that. We need to be looking at skills assessment. So how do we look at KPIs, create health cards for each salesperson on not just lag indicators of have they hit goal, but of lead indicators like activities, and are they using productivity tools and things like that, right? And assess them so that we can create targeted data-driven coaching. And other things is getting into the sales and retention process and methodology, helping with that sales strategy, I know when I started at Edmunds, we were moving to a new building in Santa Monica, California. And HR put the training department, the sales training department, in with them in this new building. And I went to the senior VP of sales and I said, do you see us as a superfluous kind of program, or do you see us as a trusted advisor? And they said, well, trusted advisor. Well, then why aren't we sitting right around you? So the training team actually was all around him and giving him advice about those salespeople that were there. But I would also work in tandem with L&D for learning development, for leadership development, because often L&D, does leadership training, change management stuff, but that doesn't always apply to a sales manager. It has to go a little deeper. Also, my teams have been in charge of the communication, the collateral distribution of not only training materials, but marketing, tools management. So productivity tools, I think, is one of the big ones you should absolutely start working on. And rehearsal is a great tool for the training department. But if your team is using Outreach, HighSpot, Salesforce Maps, any of those tools out there, why not you have control of those so that you can increase the usage, along with recruitment support. So often in my teams, my trainers actually conducted recruiting, and rehearsal will work for this. I'll show you that in a moment, but we would actually interview every single sales rep coming in and follow a very specific procedure on asking very targeted questions. Objection handling, like, my budget is set, let me think it over. We'd have like 3 or 4 objections like that. And then we'd be able to test that candidate's sales skills. In fact, we doubled down on that with rehearsal to be able to help us that way. And now the sales hiring manager doesn't have to look for sales skills. They can spend their time to see if it's a good cultural fit with that candidate, along with just coaching. And Daryl hit it right on with the defining. You need to define coaching. Often with sales managers, they think they're coaching, but it's really directing. And Daryl, you're spot on. I mean, absolutely, this is the way that we should be teaching coaching skills. And rehearsal really did help me to be able to implement that. And then also, if you think about it, marketing events. So my team's in charge of the all hands meetings, the ones that are virtual, but also on site. So we just last week, even in COVID times, we were in Dallas. We had the all hands kind of big sales summit for the year. That's what sales teams, the sales enablement chooses. So that would be, my first part on this. I would also say that if you haven't already, I would define your brand within the organization. Your customers, the salespeople. But as soon as I came in, with human interest, I put in revenue enablement. I just got shirts for my team that say you can learn it on the front, and on the back is our logo with the company logo. At Edmunds, I came in, and instead of having a sales training team, we called it sales effectiveness rather than enablement, because enablement kind of sounds like a drug dealer. Sales effectiveness, it seems like a better word. So we branded immediately. All the material that we produced had that logo on it, on our slides, on our collateral. So now all of a sudden we're almost like an in-house vendor, and they see our brand. So I would absolutely suggest to you all to create that. So that's the first step. I think the second step, I would say, of the 7 is establish success metrics. And often you'll see on the left side, the least valuable data. This is what most training departments I've found are tracking. And I think they're really irrelevant, because they're not, if you want to win over sales leadership, these are the least valuable to them. They really don't care how many people you trained. They don't care what your attendance was, how much content you built, what the test scores were of the students that came out, how many were certified, or even really the time to the first sale. A lot of people will do that. And I actually think that is a bad stat. I think it's junk, because it matters who was in the territory previously and what they had in their pipeline. And when you're looking at this does not make your team valuable. What I would say is on the other side. Here are the most valuable, and feel free to take a screenshot if you want. It's the overall revenue that was produced is the increase in the sales based on a training program. I'm going to give you an example of one from rehearsal that we used with rehearsal on what happened with the increase of sales after training, right? What is that ramp speed? So the ramp speed, you would figure out what those KPIs are, those key performance indicators, and then determine at the 3-month and the 6-month and 9-month mark, what would those be? Pipeline predictability. Boy, you want to win over a sales leadership about your team? That's where you can hit it, is forecasting. So we conducted training and follow through in Salesforce forecasting tool. Let's say that we really haven't used a lot. We defined that, and we worked with the regional sales directors to make sure that was reinforced and look at the predictability of our pipeline. Now, I'm not going to go through each one of these down here, but they're here for you to read. But I would say, employee churn is also a big thing. I would be tracking how many salespeople are getting pipped, performance improvement plans, how many are quitting. That can, people quit because of bosses. They also quit because they don't see anything in the future. They're not given the tools to be able to improve and be successful. And so, if you look at ATD stats, the less training you have, the propensity for people to churn is much higher. So what is that decrease in churn? And then I would say on step 3 is identify challenges. So I'm going to give you an example of kind of how I am doing it here at Human Interest. So I first conduct interviews and audits. And I like to use outside of my team. I like to get outside feedback. Now, if you're an established team, you can still do this. It's not like, I've been here 5 years and I'm stuck, right? It's very much that you not only touch the senior management and see what their goals are, what their initiatives are, where they see the weaknesses, but also those frontline managers, the sellers, and the customers. I sit down with as many salespeople as I can, and I listen in on the sales calls. We use a tool called Gong that we can listen in on the actual calls. And what I'm doing is not telling them what they should, what they should do to be better. Mine is, wow, that's a great tactic you use. We'd love to add that into our training in the future. Could we do a success video on you that you talk about this? You win those salespeople over, and they say, well, this guy's listening to us, and he realizes that we have something valuable to provide because we're doing this every single day. I would also look at all of your CRM data. So coming into Human Interest, one of the first goals is my director of performance management that I've brought on from LinkedIn. She is looking at every single productivity tool that we use. And we're looking at when someone started and when somebody termed. So even if they're not in the organization, but we have the data on their usage of that tool, we can then figure out of the people that didn't make it over a year, were they using that tool? And that's not necessarily their fault. That's probably ours on training because they didn't see the value in it. So I would absolutely look at or apply your results to any CRM data or productivity tools data you have. And then the one that I was saying with Mark a second ago about Hawaii, I'm actually going to our President's Club. Now, that's not for me to be on the beach. I'm actually conducting advisory boards with the salespeople. And my advice would be, and you can do this right now, these are not decision boards, these are advisory boards, meaning that you go to a specific group. And with President's Club, they're all great, right? So you set up a sales one, a retention one, a competitive landscape. So if you came from a competitor, industry knowledge, and then you get them into a room and you ask them, what do you think we should be adding to our training content? And I would say, though, the most common challenges that I found at the organizations I've come in is the managers are stretched too thin to properly reinforce our training. The classroom only scenarios are one and done. And that's same with web-based. Oh, we're really interactive with our web-based training. This is why rehearsal is so important, because it isn't one and done. And then the milestone stop signs that I find is like, there's no practicing, there's no coaching, there's no feedback. If that's the case with your training program right now, those are some real challenges that you need to be aware of, because it's not sticking, the content isn't. So once I get through kind of understanding what our needs are, then I determine the solutions. And one part of many, but one part I do want to discuss on figuring out solutions is not just what the content we need, but what are the delivery methods? Now, these are the typical delivery methods that I've found. It really is more face-to-face e-learning and webinars. Now, some organizations use guided path. I'm a real fan of WalkMe. I love the WalkMe tool. It lays on top of other tools like Salesforce, and it's kinesthetic learning, which Derek at the beginning this morning was talking about. He's a Gen Xer. Me too, man. I keep telling my kids, like, but I'm from the cool generation. Yeah, I don't buy that. But where I'm more of a visual learner, where you'll find that millennials and Gen Zers are much more guided path. They're kinesthetic learners. So tools like WalkMe are great that you can just learn real time. But also, though, I think where it's really neglected is video-based coaching, and that's where rehearsal comes into play for me. I think it is a tool that anyone that's in sales training should absolutely have. And I don't think really Derek demoed it too much here, but this is kind of what it looks like, where on the trainer, or in some cases we've actually had in some past lives, I've had the managers actually create a scenario, and you can add content in there. So you can add flyers, you can add website links, so you can create like dummy sites for them and say, here's the scenario. And you record yourself, and then you say down below, if you want to look at the report for this client on their usage of our tool or our service, click on that. Now, in a 60-minute pitch or 60-second or 2-minute pitch, we want you to analyze that data, whatever it might be, right? Analyze the data and speak to it, to the client, of what the goods, what's going well, what they can improve on, and how you would try to upsell them. That's an example, right? That then goes to the second one, which is the response from the seller. And then the third is that the manager does then give feedback. And that was where our biggest epiphany was the manager feedback. I'll tell you that in a second. So really where I utilize video-based coaching, and we utilized extensively in my Edmunds world, was first for onboarding. It's great for role play. There's no doubt it's a great delivery device for that. If right now you are doing role play and onboarding classes where you have a student, like you do role play with them with the other, let's say 5 or 6 students that are in that class, and you go around round robin to each of them, you are wasting your training time, absolutely positively, because I, as a student, am only worried about how I do in that 1/6 of that session. I don't care how everybody else does. So the wonderful thing is that you can create rehearsal assignments and send those out, and they can do those that night or that afternoon, so that the trainer then has the ability to review them, to give them feedback, but then the next day they can show some of the great stuff that was shown, right? That was presented in role play. It's much more efficient. The other one is, and I don't think a lot of our rehearsals teams are doing this, but I actually love using it for recruitment. So we videotaped at Edmunds our vice president of sales that said, "Welcome to the interview process. You've gotten past these, certain stages of screening and things. And now what we want you to do is pitch us the product or service that you currently are selling in 2 minutes and send it to us." So we use rehearsal that way. And boy, you can find out who is not technical. They can't figure out how to do it. You're like, we're a tech SaaS model company. This ain't going to work. My son helped me create the PowerPoint deck. Okay, that's a red flag too in a tech industry. So it weeded out a lot of folks, and it really helped us to hire better people. And then the last one is the leadership coaching. This is where we found that the feedback that was being given by the regional directors to their salespeople in rehearsal was weak. And so now we gave access to our like regional vice presidents to look at their directors' feedback and coach them. So it actually trickled down. And so the best thing about rehearsal for us was realizing that our leaders were really bad coaches, and that's where we needed to work with. Step 5 is what I would say is, once you know what you need to deliver, create that content, perform it through HTVs. This is something I used to use in the innovation development team with Best Buy. It's a hypothesis, test, validate. So everything you do is HTVs. So what I would say with these HTVs are they're quick baby steps. We believe the outcome will be, right? You test it. Was our hypothesis correct or not? And then we continuously repeat. If it didn't work, no problem. So everything you train, and that's how my team, now that I'm just getting established at Human Interest, that's how my team will build everything in the future. So to give you a kind of an idea of what that is, I'm going to show you on the rehearsal side. So our hypothesis was rehearsal is easy to use and seen as beneficial by top influencers. So we did video sales pitches of 20 top sellers at a special pilot product launch. And it came back as positive, and management buy-in. They were like, this is pretty cool. We like the sales pitch. We'd love to use it with the rest of the organization. So then we did our next HTV was the first test of selling an existing product. So the hypothesis was this assignment will lift sales on a lackluster current product that the sales reps are just neglecting to sell because they have a suite of packages they've kind of forgotten about. So we tested with making them do a sales pitch, but we only tested a third of the sales team. What we validated was that, and these are acronyms here, but the relationship managers, which was the third of the team that went through the rehearsal assignments on that product, they're over the next 60 days, their increase in sales was 203% on that product. The other two groups that we didn't test originally were the sales executives and the account executives. And you can see only 33% increase or 3%. There were no spiffs. There was nothing that could change it. The training directly did that, allowing them to coach. And so we learned then the managers who coached well in the rehearsal coaching part back to their sellers experienced higher results. So the managers that blew it off and were like, yeah, you did great, check. Their relationship managers didn't have as successful of amount of sales. And then test 2 is selling a new product. So we did it again, but this time we did it with the entire organization. And then from that, we were able to identify who were the struggling sellers, so we could target training to them. Identified who the weak managers were, so we could target to them. And then finally, I think we did 4 tests on this. The third hypothesis was, all right, the assignments evaluate in-person training that we've done stuck in the manager. And if the manager takes ownership, they'll coach more. So what we did is we had the managers film the instructions. And when the managers did the instructions and did a good job with rehearsal, they had a higher seller increase, and the managers became better coaches. And the final test was retention and value prop. So our question was, if managers have to coach the sellers, there will be a high retention rate, and directors can identify weak managers. So we did 3 video pitches within rehearsal for the relationship managers. And what we found is that retention's hard to track. And so there was a hypothesis that didn't really follow through because we couldn't figure out the data on it. But there was a byproduct of it that when the directors started coaching their managers, all of a sudden we were getting results that the managers were becoming better leaders. So in the last 2 parts I want to talk to you about is kind of quick here on step 6 is track value. So once you've done some hypothesis test validates, tracking the value, I would look up, if you don't know about this, is Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of evaluation. If you just look up Kirkpatrick's ROI model just through a search, you will find this. It's great. It really helps. So most training departments are down at the first level. Reaction, did the learners enjoy training? Smile sheets. Well, what tools like rehearsal can get you up to that level 3 and level 4 impact of really what is your training doing. And then the final one I'd say is communicating your success. So I'll give you a quick idea on that. This is actually not rehearsal. This is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I was at a company called lynda.com. We were looking at Navigator, and what you can see there, it's kind of hard to kind of see all the numbers, but what we did is we took an inside sales team, and we said, who are the top third users of that productivity tool? Who are the bottom third users of that productivity tool? And then we saw, did you hit goal or not? And what came out of it was that 67% of the top third LinkedIn Sales Navigator users reached quota, compared to the 28% of the lowest users of that tool reached quota. So what you can do by that, you can say to salespeople, instead of saying this is a great tool, you can say Sales Navigator users are 2.5 times more likely to hit goal. And not only that, this is what that top third users of that productivity tool do. So 21 in-mails and 34 profiles. Well, there's our KPI. And then the communication part is, after 60 days, we communicated out, after we did this research study, we conducted the training, and they were checked up on it. We saw that within that sales team, there was a 3 times increase in in-mails. There was a 2.5 times increase in profiles viewed over a month, the 60 period. And we found one $60,000 deal was because of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And then we recorded that salesperson doing that, talking about that sale that they closed using Sales Navigator. So now it's not a trainer teaching, saying this tool is great. It's people around you that sell every day. So there are your 7 steps. I appreciate the opportunity to reach. I know we have 2 or 3 minutes for any questions that want to be asked, but feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm under Dean of Learning.
All right. Thank you so much, Don. That was really great. I think we do have one question. Could you go back to step 6 and just show that on the screen one more time?
Sure. For Kirkpatrick's model. Yeah, not a problem.
Yes.
Okay. And the question was?
The question was just if you could kind of reiterate step 6, because they missed it.
Yeah. So level 1 is really is those smile sheets. How did we do? I think they're really kind of irrelevant. I think that they're good to see if a trainer, people don't really react well to that trainer, but that's about it. Did the learning transfer? So that level 2 is when you actually have tests that you test their knowledge. Now that's where rehearsal can fall into play on that. But that is, did they have a certificate? But I don't know about the sales trainers here that are listening in, but my feeling is that the people that answer those questions and get the highest scores on like product knowledge in onboarding are typically the worst performers. It really does not indicate success necessarily. It just shows, did they retain the knowledge or not? So level 3 is, did they actually apply that knowledge? And that is where, did they close a sale after you train them? And this is where rehearsal is great, because we found that when people were sending their rehearsal assignment back to their manager, they were recording themselves multiple times before they hit the send button. And they didn't even realize that they were rehearsing while, because they were just doing it, right? So they were practicing over and over again without a trainer having to do it for them. So did they close a sale? And then the results is really where my team will look at, if we did a training, what were the sales that were there, right, that were made based off of that, because you can track a lot of that in Salesforce. And so then what are you paying for that tool or that training? Is there an ROI on that? It's very hard to get to level 4, but it can be done if you have a good CRM tool and you're tracking your data.
Awesome, thank you. And we've got a lot of comments saying that this is great information. People love the idea of the advisory board. So this has been really helpful. Thank you so much, Don.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. And thanks a lot to eLearning Brothers and also to the rehearsal team.